The reports coming out of Ravens training camp are starting to paint a picture that very few teams around the AFC want to see this season. Trey Hendrickson hasn't even played his first official game for Baltimore yet, but the buzz surrounding him is already spreading across the NFL. And the reason goes far beyond a few strong practices. What coaches, analysts, and people around the organization are saying about Hendrickson suggests that the Ravens may have found a player capable of taking this defense to another level. Recent comments coming out of camp help explain why there's so much excitement building around him. And once you hear what's being said behind the scenes, it becomes a lot easier to understand why people are starting to view Baltimore a little differently heading into this season. Some players need months to earn respect in a new locker room. Trey Hendrickson seems to have taken a different route. It only took a few days of training camp for his name to become one of the biggest talking points surrounding the Ravens defense. What makes it even more interesting is that this isn't about stats or highlight plays from real games. The attention comes from the way he arrived, the way he practices, and the way he immediately fit into the culture of the team. Anyone who follows NFL training camps knows that preseason praise should always be taken with a grain of salt. Every summer brings glowing reports about players, but some comments carry more weight than others. NFL insider Ian Rappaport described Hendrickson this way. He's an intense dude. He fits in here. He's tough, he's physical, and he wants it very, very, very badly. When someone who covers the entire league uses that kind of language, it's worth paying attention. The tone of those comments suggests that people inside the organization are already noticing his impact. What stands out most to me is the combination of talent and competitiveness. The Ravens have always valued players who bring energy, accountability, and intensity to the building. Based on everything coming out of camp, Hendrickson checks every one of those boxes. He doesn't look like someone who's simply happy to be on a new team. He looks like a player who shows up every day determined to prove something. Every practice feels like another opportunity for him to send a message to the rest of the league. That may be one of the biggest reasons expectations are already climbing before the season has even started. The excitement isn't based only on what he's showing right now. It's also based on everything he's already accomplished throughout his career. Very few pass rushers manage to sustain a high-level production year after year. And once you take a closer look at Hendrickson's resume, it becomes much easier to understand why the Ravens believe they may have found a player capable of transforming this defense. There's a huge difference between a player who creates hype and a player who has already proven himself over time. In Hendrickson's case, the Ravens aren't betting on potential. They're bringing in someone who has already built an extremely productive NFL career. At 31 years old, he has recorded 81 career sacks, a number that only a small group of defenders ever reach. When a player arrives with credentials like that, the conversation shifts from potential to immediate impact. The Ravens' official website highlighted a detail that helps put this signing into perspective. According to Clifton Brown, Hendrickson is only 31 years old and has 81 career sacks. If he stays healthy, he looks like a lock to far exceed 100 career sacks. That's not just another projection. Reaching 100 sacks places a player in an elite category within the league. And when you look at Hendrickson's recent production, there's little evidence that he's slowing down. If anything, he's still performing at a very high level. Another thing that stands out is consistency. Plenty of pass rushers put together one great season and then struggle to maintain that level. Hendrickson built his reputation by producing year after year. Opposing offenses know exactly who he is. They study him, game plan for him, and dedicate resources to slowing him down. Yet he continues to find ways to pressure quarterbacks and change games. That ability to remain productive even when everyone knows you're coming is what separates good players from special ones. And that's where the excitement around Baltimore starts to make even more sense. The Ravens aren't just adding a respected veteran or someone who had a few impressive practices. They're adding a defender who spent years making life miserable for offensive lines across the NFL. But there's another interesting layer to this story. While plenty of people are already making predictions about what he might do this season, Hendrickson himself isn't interested in making any bold promises. And his response to those expectations says a lot about the mindset he brings to the field. At a time when many players love making bold predictions before the season even begins, Trey Hendrickson has chosen a different approach. Instead of talking about sack totals, awards, or personal goals, he's made it clear that he'd rather let his play do the talking. That mindset fits perfectly with the reputation he's built throughout his career. Less talking, more work. Less hype, more production when it matters. When he was asked about expectations for the season, his response was short and direct. Hendrickson said, "I'm not into predictions. All I can give you is, we're going to hit when the pads come on." For anyone unfamiliar with training camp terminology, pads coming on marks the point when practices become much more physical. In other words, Hendrickson is saying that the real test begins when football starts feeling like football again. It's a confident statement, but one that doesn't rely on flashy headlines or empty promises. What stands out most about that answer is how focused he seems on the process. While fans and analysts are debating how many sacks he might record or how dominant this defense could become, Hendrickson appears locked in on the next practice, the next rep, and the next opportunity to improve. That kind of mentality is highly respected inside NFL organizations because success usually comes from preparation, discipline, and consistency long before the games begin. As important as Hendrickson is, though, he knows he can't carry an entire defense by himself. No pass rusher, no matter how talented, dominates a season without help around him. And that's where things get even more interesting for Baltimore. Defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver believes this unit has far more talent than just one star edge rusher. If he's right, opposing offenses could be dealing with a much bigger problem than they originally expected. When a defense relies on one player to create pressure, opposing offenses usually find ways to neutralize that threat. Baltimore's situation appears to be very different. While Hendrickson is the newest headline-grabbing addition, defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver has made it clear that he sees talent throughout the entire defensive front. That means opposing quarterbacks may have a hard time figuring out where the pressure is coming from on any given snap. Weaver explained that confidence by saying, "We have some guys that can get there, whether that's through their game, through scheme, or on their own." That comment reveals a lot about how Baltimore views this group. The Ravens don't want to rely solely on blitzes or creative play designs to generate pressure. They want defenders who can win one-on-one battles consistently. When a defense has multiple players capable of doing that, everything becomes more effective. Another part of Weaver's comments stood out as well. He said, "Thus far, I love what I'm seeing with the overall work ethic of all those front guys." That detail may be just as important as any statistic. Talent matters, but great defenses are usually built on collective commitment and daily effort. From everything being reported out of camp, that's exactly the kind of environment the Ravens are trying to create right now. If this combination of talent, depth, and work ethic continues to develop, Baltimore could end up fielding one of the toughest defenses in the AFC. And when a team can pressure quarterbacks from multiple angles, the impact extends far beyond the defensive side of the ball. There's one player in particular who could benefit tremendously from that growth, Lamar Jackson. And that might be the factor that takes the Ravens from contender to legitimate championship threat.
If you're enjoying this breakdown, smash that like button to help the purple flock grow.
For much of his career, Lamar Jackson has carried enormous expectations on his shoulders. When the Ravens win, much of the credit goes to him. When they lose, much of the criticism follows him as well. That's why a stronger defense could mean much more than improved statistics for Baltimore. It could completely change the way this team wins football games. When a defense consistently pressures quarterbacks, forces mistakes, and controls the flow of games, the offense doesn't have to operate under constant pressure. Lamar remains one of the most gifted players in the NFL, but even elite quarterbacks don't want to feel like they have to score on every possession. A dominant defense creates breathing room, improves field position, and takes pressure off the offense in critical moments. Looking at the current roster, it's easy to understand why there's so much excitement inside the organization. Baltimore already has an elite quarterback, an efficient offensive system, and a physical identity that has defined the franchise for years. Now, with Hendrickson joining the mix and the defensive front continuing to develop, the Ravens have a chance to add another major strength to an already talented team. When a roster is balanced on both sides of the ball, it naturally enters a conversation among the league's most dangerous contenders. And that's why the biggest takeaway from this story may not be Trey Hendrickson alone. What's truly grabbing attention is what his arrival could mean for the entire roster. If the early signs from training camp carry over into the regular season, the Ravens could once again have the kind of defense that changes games almost by itself. And when a team combines a suffocating defense with a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, it's easy to see why the rest of the AFC is paying close attention. What makes this situation so intriguing isn't simply the fact that Trey Hendrickson is receiving praise during training camp. Every year, a number of players generate buzz during the preseason. The difference here is who we're talking about. This isn't an unproven prospect or a player trying to revive his career. This is a defender with 81 career sacks who has spent years proving he belongs among the NFL's most productive pass rushers. And he appears to have arrived in Baltimore with the same hunger that fueled his success elsewhere. What's also hard to ignore is how many people are highlighting the exact same traits. Ian Rappaport pointed to Hendrickson's intensity. Anthony Weaver praised the work ethic of the defensive front. And throughout the organization, there's a growing belief that his presence can elevate this defense as a whole. When multiple voices keep pointing to the same strengths, it's usually a sign that something meaningful is happening behind the scenes. If the reports coming out of training camp are only a preview of what's ahead, the Ravens may have found a player capable of raising the ceiling of this defense in a big way. But now the question goes to you. Do you believe Trey Hendrickson will be the missing piece that takes Baltimore's defense to another level this season? Or do you think it's still too early to buy into all the hype? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.
And if you're a true Ravens fan and love keeping up with everything happening around the team, don't leave this video without sharing it with a friend who's just as passionate. They're definitely going to enjoy this. See those videos on your screen right now? I picked the first one especially for you, and the other is recommended by YouTube. Go check them out, and I'll see you in the next video.